Builder! What is this? This is the newly announced Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. How much does it cost? It's gonna cost $1,295, and that includes a full license of DaVinci Resolve. They've updated the sensor from Super 16 to a Micro Four Thirds sensor. It's got dual ISO. It records to multiple flavors of ProRes along with Cinema DNG RAW. It can take SD cards, it can take CFast cards, it can also record to external SSD through its USB Type-C port. Has a full HDMI port. Takes Canon LP6 batteries for better battery life. Am I gonna pre-order it? I'm close. I'm really damn close. Done. Roll that intro. What's up, everybody? You are watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we are constantly and always still learning. So last week was an exciting week for all filmmakers alike because the annual NAB trade show was just last week. Now, while this NAB had plenty of products that would interest any of us, there was one that stood out that's probably going to be a major game changer, and that is none other than the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. That's right, they've finally updated that little camera with a completely new design, and pretty much from the ground up, everything has changed. Now, while this thing has a whole lot of features, I'm really only going to cover the ones that jumped out to me that I feel is going to pretty much dictate whether or not I'm going to actually pre-order this camera, which I'm about 95% ready to do it. Yes, I know, this is all just tech specs written on paper and it sounds really great, but if you take a look at how Blackmagic's cameras have evolved in design and performance, I think we might be coming in at a very sweet time here. But again, that still has yet to be seen until we actually get a camera in our hands. So without further ado, let's get started. One of the biggest things was they've actually updated the sensor. It is no longer a Super 16 sensor, rather it is now slightly larger than the Micro Four Thirds, which is awesome. So now all the Micro Four Thirds glass, if you're already an Olympus or a Panasonic shooter, is going to fit right in with this camera with no major crop factors. Number two, they have dual ISO capabilities. I believe ISO 400 and ISO 2500. Depending on your situation and how you're lighting your sets or lack thereof, being able to jump from both of those ISOs with nice clean images is definitely a welcomed feature and something that I'm definitely excited for. Number three, they're introducing a slightly new color science, but generally speaking, Arri, Canon, and Blackmagic have really nice color science, especially when you're shooting from their flat log profile and using their Rec. 709. Now, I believe Blackmagic's color science is the most neutral of the bunch that doesn't seem to have any bias, which is great because depending on how you work your own custom LUTs into this camera, you can definitely match other cameras and pull out the best cinematic image possible. Number four, it has a large 5-inch 1080p screen on the back. Now, if you're buying external monitors, there's generally two sizes that filmmakers go for. They either go for 5 inches or 7 inches. So it's awesome to know that you already have a 5-inch monitor available. This makes focus pulling a lot easier, and if you're reviewing footage of a take, it's nice to have a nice large monitor to basically take a look to see if everything's in focus, if composition's great, what have you. Now, unfortunately, this screen is not a flip out screen. It just has a slight tilt to it, so if it's at a low angle, you might be able to catch what's going on. So depending on your shooting style and what kind of rig you have set up, you might actually need to buy a second screen just so you can have that flexibility. But if you don't, and your tripod is usually above waist level, then you might actually be okay. So this is really kind of on a user base on what your shooting style is, whether or not that this will be a pro or a con. Now lastly, you're not only just getting the camera, but you're getting a full license to the DaVinci Resolve 15 suite at a value of about $300. Now, while this may not seem like a big deal, it actually is, because ever since DaVinci 11, they've started adding an NLE editor inside of their color suite. They've since then added an entire suite of post-production for your audio, and now they're adding in Fusion, which is basically a compositor and visual effects tool, into DaVinci Resolve. So quite literally, you're basically able to do not only use their camera to shoot everything, but now you have an NLE editor post-production for your audio, visual effects if you do it, and finalizing with color. So you're basically now able to do your entire post-production in one piece of software, which is definitely a time saver, and Blackmagic knows what they're doing with this. Now those are all the main features that hooked me. There are a couple other little ones that are worth mentioning. I love the Blackmagic's way of focused peaking. Now, up until now, GH4s and GH5s have the focus peaking feature. However, I believe they are contrast based, and the way their tolerances are done, it just never seemed to work well for me. I can never tell if the eyes are in focus. It will focus to maybe glasses frames or maybe a strand of hair. And if the background has a high contrast point, sometimes it'll even say the background's in focus when in actuality it's not. So I've never actually counted on the focus peaking feature, especially for wider shots. Close-ups, yeah, they work just fine. However, on medium shots, it's a guessing game sometimes, and it might just be a hair out of focus. Another awesome feature is false color. Now, if you know how to read false color, it's awesome because you basically can just look at the image and notice if the side of the face is hot, if that's too cold, or if the background is just too bright compared to your main subject. This false color gives you a really quick read, and it's awesome that the camera has it built in. Now, another thing is obviously if you're shooting in the Blackmagic camp, they've always traditionally allowed you to shoot in Cinema DNG RAW and also ProRes. This camera has pretty much all the ProRes flavors along with Cinema DNG RAW. Now, the interesting thing is that Apple has recently announced their ProRes RAW codec, and Blackmagic is actually testing this right now. But I'm pretty sure in the next year or two, there's probably gonna be a firmware update that allows us to shoot in ProRes RAW. Now lastly, and this is not totally confirmed yet, but they do say that the original Metabones Blackmagic Pocket Camera Edition is not going to work. However, the regular ones for Panasonic cameras will, like the Ultra. That being said, I'm wondering if the Viltrox will work as well, because if it does, good news for me. Now this may all sound good and dandy, but Blackmagic does have a bit of a track record in terms of what they promise and what they actually deliver. So that being said, they do say that they're going to ship or at least be available in September, but they also said December, and we have seen them basically push back shipping dates over and over again. So I'm just gonna say, if you have a project that you're lining up for the fall, you might wanna not count on it because they might not deliver in time. Secondly, there's always some really odd quirks, most infamously the Black Sun fiasco. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a problem still because I'm assuming they would have tested this, seeing how everyone was, up in hoo-ha's about it. So hopefully there's not going to be as many bugs this time around in terms of their launch, and that the camera will work more or less 100% right out of the box.
So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that Blackmagic is again disrupting the market with their announcements. They're giving us an incredibly long list of things on paper, but we have yet to see if it's actually going to follow through. But here's the thing though. Blackmagic, despite their early generations of cameras, they've all progressively gotten better with each generation. And I think we're starting to hit that heyday where they kind of have figured out what they're doing, and it's going to come out as they say it's going to come out. And that being said, they're also working really hard with their DaVinci Resolve suite. And you'll notice that they're making the hardware and they're also making the software, which sounds a whole lot like Apple, where they make the hardware and they make the software and are designed to work with each other in the best, most efficient way possible. And I think we're getting into that heyday where Apple was starting to rise again when Steve Jobs came back. So that being said, I think we're gonna be okay. So where does that leave me in terms of wanting to pre-order this camera or not? Chances are you're probably thinking the same thing I am. You're going, whoa, GH5S or Blackmagic Pocket 4K? Because they sound very similar, but the Pocket is giving us a whole lot more features for a whole lot less money. So that being said, this is going to be kind of a slight ramble, but I'm going to try to condense it as best as I can. You have to look at this Blackmagic Pocket as a cinema camera in the sense that you're planning out everything. You're planning out your shots, you're planning out your lighting, you're planning out the LUTs that's gonna go in to give the overall color look. You're thinking about all these things. Now, yes, you are also thinking about that stuff with the GH5S and any movies in general because you gotta work with it work with your camera body, but there's definitely another level of thought with this type of camera. Because not only that, they're giving you other features with higher end codecs. So now you have to decide, well, am I gonna just bake it into ProRes or am I gonna shoot in RAW? And if that's the case, then this camera might cost more or less the same as a GH5 because you're gonna have to buy a whole lot more recording media just to handle all that information. And then your computer is also gonna have to handle all that information. Not only that, if you need an external monitor because you do find yourself needing a flip out screen or just something in general, then that's more money spent there. And depending on what budget you have, it could be anywhere from, $200 all the way to $1,000 for that external monitor. And then the battery life. We do know that they say it's gonna give you approximately 60 minutes of recording time. I'm gonna conservatively guess, and it's probably gonna be closer to 45. And so you're gonna have to buy more batteries, or you're gonna externally rig it up. So when it's all said and done, you might end up at $2,000, which is a GH5, or you might even end up to a GH5S at $2,500. So here's the thing. So all that budget concern that I just talked about is why I'm not pre-ordering it just yet. I really, really need to think about this. Because once I go into that type of camp, then I'm probably moving my entire workflow into that world. And that is not a scary thing, it's just a thing that I need to think about. Because up until this point, when I shot on the GH4, Canon T3i, and the Panasonic GH5, everything's like, oh, there's the camera, and there's my lens, it's an SD card, boom, it's there, I light it, blah, 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 that's all hunky-dory. But now this camera is forcing me to really think, do I want to jump into that world where almost everything is done at a much higher quality with LUTs that I need to preconceive and with media that I need to have plenty of because I no longer can just get an hour and a half of footage on one card. I'm probably down to like 20 or 30 minutes or even less per card, which means I don't get to do as many takes and I have to plan out my shots even more than I already do. And there you have it, folks. Did you order this camera already? Let's have a really fun discussion. Put your comments and questions and concerns down below, and let's talk about this as we eagerly await for this camera. Now, if I do pre-order this camera, I'm definitely gonna let you guys know. I'm gonna write a little short 5-minute film, and basically I'm gonna put it through its daylight scenes all the way to its dark, moodier scenes, and then do some action with it and non-action with it so that we can really put this camera through its paces. Now, if it does a really good job, then I guess I'm gonna probably shift my principal cameras to the 4K pockets and have it ready for my feature film in 2019. Blackmagic, good job. You've got my attention. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.